So let's begin our second part of this course, where we will create our first 3D model. We will start up DesignModeler and go over the interface, the sketching, and finally creating the 3D model. By the end of this module, you'll be familiar with the tools necessary to create this 3D model for our analysis and will be equipped with the knowledge to create your own models in the future. So before we get started designing our first part, in Ansys there are now two 3D modelers you could use to design your Ansys model. The first one is called DesignModeler and has been around since the start of Ansys Workbench and is the default 3D modeling tool. The second is called SpaceClaim, which is relatively new and might require some special licenses in order to use. So for the purpose of this tutorial, we'll be using DesignModeler to build our model. To open DesignModeler, we can either double-click on cell number 3, or we can right-click on the cell number 3 and click on New DesignModeler Geometry. So let's go ahead and click on this right now. So once inside the Ansys DesignModeler interface, you will notice that it is similar to other feature-based modelers such as AutoCAD or SolidWorks. The graphical user interface has 5 basic regions. Toolbars, which is located at the top of the interface. The second one being the tree outline and toolboxes, which is located at the far left of the interface. The tree outline or toolboxes are displayed depending on the mode selected here of the application. Third being the graphics window, located in the center of the interface. This takes up a majority of the space. It also shows by default the Ansys version at the top right, a ruler at the bottom, a coordinate system triad, and also at the very bottom a toggle to switch between a print preview mode for printing. The fourth one is the details view located in the bottom left corner of the interface. The details view displays different types of information depending on the mode of the application. The fifth one is the status bar, and that's located at the bottom of the interface. The status bar displays information about the current state of the application. So starting with the menus toolbar, we can see we have a couple of different menus here. We have the first one, which is the file menu, which contains basic file operations. The second one, which is the create menu, which contains various 3D creation and modification tools. The third one is the concept menu, which contains tools to create line bodies and surfaces. The fourth one is the tools menu, used for program customization, parameter management, and global modeling operations. Fifth one is the units menu, where you can use this for changing your unit settings. You have the view menu, which is used to modify display settings. And finally, the help menu, which provides access to offline or online application documentations. So I won't be going over all of the toolboxes with you, but I will be covering some of the important ones. So starting here at the top, we have the Start Over. So you can also access this from the File menu and clicking on Start Over. This essentially erases all progress and starts your project over from a new slate. We have next here, we have the Save Project. Next to that, we have Export. We also have an image capture if you want to save a capture of your progress. We have here Undo, Redo. Next to that, we have the Selection menu. So here we can go and change it, let's say our select mode from a single select to a box select. This helps us select multiple objects at the same time. Here we have the selection filters. So here we can choose, let's say if we want to just choose a point or a vertex on a body, we would use this filter. If we just want to select an edge, we can click on this one. A face would be this filter. And finally, if we want to select bodies, we would use this filter right here. Moving on, we have the rotations mode toolbar. So here we can use the rotate view. We have a pan view over here. Here we have zoom, box zoom, zoom to fit, toggle magnifier window, etc. Here we have to set an ISO view. We also have a section plane, so you can create a new section plane using this tool right here. Next we have the display toolbar. So here we have the display pane. So this allows you to toggle between displaying an axis, vectors, and origin point. Next we have the display model, which allows you to toggle between displaying the 3D model or not. If you turn off the 3D model, the plane is turned on automatically. Then next we have the display points, which allows you to toggle between displaying the points generated by point features in the model or not. And finally, we have the Look at Face, Plane, or Sketch button. This button centers the display on the currently selected face, active plane, or active sketch. So as you can see here, if we have the XY plane selected, and let's say we rotate our view around, we can click on this button and we will have a normal view towards this face. So enough talk about the interface, and let's get started building our model. So the first thing we want to do is make sure our units are correct. So let's go ahead into the Units menu here and change this from meter to millimeters. Now as you can see here, the ruler at the bottom changed, and now we have a scale from 0 to 60 millimeters, and if you were to zoom out with the scroll wheel, you'll see that that changes. So in order to start sketching, we're going to move over to the Tree Outline menu. You can see here we have 3 planes to choose from to start sketching, the XY, ZX, and YZ planes. So if I click on this, we have here the green and red arrows lit up for the XY plane. Click on this, we have the ZX plane showing, and finally here the YZ plane. So for our sketch, we're going to be clicking on the XY plane, and we're going to click on this button to look at this face. Once we're looking at this face, we're going to change the mode from the Modeling tab to the Sketching tab. Now here you can see, I'm just going to scroll down and drag this a little bit to get more space here, but you can see we have multiple toolboxes available for us in order to sketch our 3D model. The first one being the Draw toolbox, where you have some basics as lines, polylines, polygons, rectangles, ovals, circles, etc. We have here the Modify toolbox, where you can create fillets, chamfers, extend your object, cut, copy, paste, etc. The third one is the Dimensions toolbox. So here you can go and set dimensions and constrain your geometry. So there's a general one. There's, if you want a fixed horizontal dimension, a vertical dimension, a radius, diameter. There's also even semi-automatic, which will automatically apply dimensions. After that, we have the constraints. So here is if you want to apply constraints to your sketches. So here you can fix a line in length and in space. You can also fix here to make a line horizontal or fix it to vertical. You can have perpendicular constraints, tangent, symmetry, parallel constraints, etc. And finally, here you have the settings where you can add a grid and add major grid spacing or minor grid spacing. So let's go ahead and turn on the grid and click on Show in 2D, and let's click on the snap. So the snap will basically snap your sketches to this grid. So it's basically easier to build your geometry if you're doing something very simple. If you have something a bit more complicated, you might want to turn off the snap. So let's go now into the Draw toolbox, and let's zoom in our project here. And we're going to start off by drawing a rectangle. So let's click on the rectangle tool right here. And we're going to draw a rectangle that's just anywhere. It doesn't make a difference. We're going to constrain this in later. So we're just going to click on a point here, and we're going to draw this rectangle out. And let's say I do something a bit asymmetrical and click End here. So the next step is to add dimensions to this rectangle. So we're going to go ahead over to the Dimensions tab right here on the left under the sketching toolboxes. Once we click on that, we're going to use the semi-automatic function. So let's go and click on that right there. Now as I move my mouse into the graphics window, you will see that I automatically have a dimension ready to be set. And at the bottom we have semi-automatic, click to indicate location for dimension, or use right mouse button for options. So we're going to do exactly that. We're going to click on a location to indicate this dimension. So we're going to click, let's say, right here, and then that will set the first point called L1, which is a length 1 for this side. Next, as you can see, automatically it asks us to add a horizontal dimension. So we're going to go and use the location right here and click left. And then we're going to have to add the spacing between the right side of this box and the center of the origin. So we're going to click right here, and then the final one will be between the bottom and the horizontal line, so we're going to click right here. Now once that's done, we have all our constraints set, and if we move this up a little bit, we can see here that we have 4 dimensions now set. So we have L1, L2, H3, and V4. These are just arbitrary values arbitrary designations by Ansys. So what we're going to do is we're going to change these values and we're going to make this somewhat more symmetrical. So let's first click on L1 and we're going to enter here 200. So put 200 and then hit enter. Now as you can see, this zooms out of our window, so what we're going to do is use this button here called Zoom to Fit. Next we're going to change L2, click on this right here, and then we're going to click on 200 and then click enter. And now we're going to space out H3 and V4 and we're going to put 100 for each of these. So 100 for H3 and V4 we're going to click here and we're going to put 100. Click enter. And now we're going to click on Zoom to Fit again to center our screen. So there you have it. There's our centered rectangle, which is 200 by 200 millimeters. Now in order to create a 3D solid from this, we have to switch over to the modeling mode. So we're going to go here and change from the sketching, and we're going to click here into modeling. Now as you can see here, the sketch is now outlined in blue. So what we're going to do is we're going to go here and we have now a new sketch under the XY plane. So clicking on this plus button will expand the first sketch that we created called Sketch 1. Now in order to extrude this sketch, we can go and click on this button here called Extrude, or we can head over into the Create button and click on Extrude from there. So let's go and click on that right now. Now the first thing it asks you is to select the geometry that you want to extrude. So what we're going to do is we're going to go and click on Sketch 1 here, and we're going to click on Apply. So the geometry is now set to extrude Sketch 1. The next detail it asks you is what type of operation do you want to do. So here if we click on the drop down, we have a few options. We have one which is called Add Frozen and the other one which is called Add Material. Now the difference between these two is that Add Material will add a material to an existing body. So let's say you sketched an object and then you create a sketch on top of it and extrude it. It will combine those two sketches and those two extrusions together and it will create one new body. If you want to create two separate bodies, then we would use the option called Add Frozen. So for now we're creating our first body, so we're going to keep it as Add Material. The next parameter here is the direction vector. So here we're going to choose, if you click here, we have the direction vector. It just has none, so we're going to click on Apply and leave that as the default. Now the direction is normal to, so normal to our sketch plane. So it's going to extrude, if we rotate this out, we can see here that it's going to extrude it into the +Z direction. So now what we want to do is actually reverse this just for the tutorial's sake and put this in reverse. So that's going to extrude it in the -Z direction. Now there is also a few other options that we can use, which is both symmetric and both asymmetric. So if we wanted to extrude it in both the negative and positive Z directions, we can use this button here, and now you can see that we have an extrusion in both the +Z and the -Z directions, and the depth is 30 millimeters. But let's say we wanted something asymmetric, we can click on this parameter here, and now you have two depths, one for the normal and one for the reverse normal direction. But we're going to go and just use the simple reverse direction now. So click on that for now. And next what we're going to do is choose the extend type. So the extend type basically has a few options as well. So here the default is fixed, and depending on if there were other bodies in this, you would see other options here. So you'll see this in a few moments. The next parameter, as I said before, is the depth of the extrusion. We're going to go and change this to 60 millimeters and then hit enter. There's another option here if you want to extrude this as a thin surface. The default is no, and we're going to keep that as no for this because we want to extrude a solid body. And finally here it asks you if you would like to merge topology, and this is if you have again multiple bodies. If you would like to merge the surface topology, the default is yes. So again, we're just creating the first one here, so we're just going to leave this as yes. Now once all that's done, as you can see here in the status bar at the bottom, it says click Generate button to complete the extrude. So the Generate button is located right here, and we're going to click that to create our extrusion. And there you have it. So if you'd like to remove all these sketch lines and grid lines, we can go and click on this quick toolbar button called the Display Pane button, and then that will get rid of all that for us. So now we have our base, which we'll be using to fix our lifting lug to. And at the left here you can see that it added in the tree outline an extrude. So if we click on this right here, we'll see that it used the sketch 1 in order to create an extrude of 60 millimeters. So if we ever wanted to change some of these parameters, we can go and change the sketch right here, and we can also go back and change the extrude properties if we made a mistake. So let's collapse that right now. Next, you can see here underneath, it created one part and one body. So let's go and click on the plus here, and now we see we have a solid that's been generated. So this solid now has a volume, surface area, number of edges, and it gives you a bunch of properties here in the details view about the solid. Now is a good time to go and rename this solid to base. So let's right click on this and click on rename, and we'll enter base and then hit enter. So now that our base is created, we're going to go and now start designing our lifting lug. So the first thing we're going to want to do is click on this face right here. So make sure that you have the surface selector selected here, and then we're going to click on this face, and we're going to click on this button again to look at this face normal to it. Next, we're going to click on this display pane, which will bring back our grid lines. Now the next step to create this is we're going to click on again the XY plane here, and we're going to click on this button here, which is create a new sketch. So let's go and click on this button right now. This creates here under the XY plane something called Sketch 2 by default. Once again, if you want to rename this, we can rename this right here, but we're going to leave this as Sketch 2 for now by default. Now once we're in Sketch 2, we're going to create another box, which will be the base of our lifting lug. So in Sketch 2, let's move over to the Sketching tab by clicking on this button right here. Once in the Sketching tab, we're going to go and move this a bit down to get a bit more view, and then we're going to create another rectangle. So let's go and click on a point here, and click on another point here. Next, we're going to go back into Dimensions, and we're going to choose Semi-Automatic once again. And we're going to repeat the same process and click on here, select L5, L6, H7, and V8. So now we're going to bring this details window back up, and we're going to add our dimensions right here. So the first one we want to choose is L5, and we want the base of this to be about 100 millimeters. So we're going to put 100 here. We're going to put this one L6 as 100, hit enter, and then the spacing between the axis, we're going to put half of that, so 50, and V8 will be 50. Once that's done, we're going to want to go and extrude this. So click on the modeling, and then click on the extrude button here, and we're going to choose Sketch 2, click on apply, and then just going to look at this in 3D view here to see what's happening already. And now we have our material extruding in the normal Z plane, which is what we want. And we're going to extrude this, we're going to change this to 10 millimeters as the depth. And because we want to add this as a new part and separate from the base, we're going to change the operation from add material to add frozen. And then we're going to go and click on generate right here. So now we have the base of our lifting lug. So the next thing we want to do is go into our two parts and right click on this solid and rename this to lifting lug. Next up, we're going to complete the lifting lug by adding the vertical part to this base plane. So what we're going to do is using the selection filter on faces, we're going to select this top face right here. And next what we're going to do is once this face is selected, we're going to click on this button here. And now this creates a new plane. So what this is going to do automatically is create a new plane from the face that we selected. So as you can see here, the plane now is called plane 4, and the type is from face. And you can have it from a plane, you can have it from another centroid. So this creates a new place based on, let's say, a coordinate system or another plane. So in this case, we have the from face, and the base face we have is already selected, this one right here. So you can see now it creates a new coordinate system on the top of this face right here. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to click on generate to create this base plane. So now we have a new coordinate system which is on the top of this base of the lifting lug. Next, what we're going to do is we're going to click on the normal to. Now there's also another way of doing that by clicking on the Z right here, and now we're normal to the surface. Now what we want to do is we want to create a sketch projection in order to retrieve these lines in order to be used for our sketch. So what we're going to do is we're going to right click on plane 4, click on insert, and then click on sketch projection. Now once that's done, we want to select the geometry, which is this face right here, and click on Apply. Then click on Generate. Now once you have that, we can click on Sketch 4 and we can see here now that it projected these edges of this base plate onto this new sketch. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go into the sketching mode and we're going to draw a rectangle. So click on the rectangle tool and we're going to draw a rectangle. Now as you can see here, there's a little C that comes up, which means that it's snapping to this edge right here. So we're going to click on that and then we're going to click on the other point right here where it snaps on the bottom of this line right here. Now we have our rectangle. Now we need to dimension it. So we're going to go into Dimensions and once again we're going to click on Semi-Automatic. So now it's dimensioning the width here, the distance from the origin, and that's it. So basically the length of this right here we know is 100 millimeters, and I want this lifting lug top plate to be about 15 millimeters thick. So if you do the math, this dimension right here, we're going to want H2 to be 42.5 millimeters, and we're going to want this length here to be 15. So that's squarely centered in between. We're going to go now and click on the Modeling tab right here, and then click on the Extrude button. And now here we want to make sure that the geometry that we're extruding is Sketch 5. So it created a new sketch here called Sketch 5. We're going to click on Apply, and the extrude depth will be 100 millimeters. So go now and click on Generate. Now if I rotate this around, you'll see here that it created a new slab here, which will be the top of the lifting lug. And if I scroll down here, it created a new solid. Next, what we want to do is round up the corners over here. So we're going to use the Blend tool. So right now we'll click on Blend. We'll choose a fixed radius. And now using the edge, we're going to choose these two edges here, this one. And we're going to hold Control and select the other edge right here. Now with these two edges selected, we're going to click and hit on the Apply for the geometry. And for the FD1 radius, we're going to add 50 millimeters. Once that's done, we'll click on Generate. Now in order to create a hole for our new lifting lug, we're going to actually choose a different plane now. So here we're going to see the ZX. No, we're going to use the YZ plane. So let's look normal to the YZ plane. Then click on this button right here to create a new plane. And now it will create a new plane called Plane 6, and it will take it from the base plane YZ plane, and it won't transform it, it won't change it whatsoever. So let's click on Generate. So now this generated a plane 6, which is identical to the YZ plane. But now what we can do with this is we can right click on plane 6 and insert once again a sketch projection. So let's click on that and let's choose this face right here and click on Apply and then click on Generate. Now we have the sketch projection of this top part of our lifting lug. So let's once again go normal to this by using this button. And we can see here it created something called Sketch 8. So with Sketch 8 selected, let's click on the sketching mode. Now here what we're going to do is click on the circle, and we're going to snap to this middle point right here, and we're going to draw out a circle. And now we're going to click on Dimension, and instead of this time using the semi-automatic dimension, what we're going to use is we're going to actually do it ourselves, and we're going to choose a vertical dimension, and we're going to click on this point here, and the second point will be using the point selector here only. We'll select this point here and we'll draw out a dimension, and then we'll use a diameter, and then we'll click on the ring here and we'll click again to select the diameter. And now here at the bottom in the details view, we will choose V1 will equal 50 and the diameter will be 40. Now that's done, we're going to go and click on the extrude button right here. And now as we can see, it's extruding on one side only. So what we want to do is look at the details view again and choose, instead of the add material operation, we're going to go and cut material. And instead of the direction being normal, we're going to have both symmetric. And now 100 millimeters will cut through all of this. It's more than we need, but it will be enough to cut through both sides of this material. Let's click on Generate. Now we have the hole for our lifting lug. Now the next step is we want to join these two materials together. So what we're going to do is click on the Create menu, click on Boolean, And then using the body selector, we're going to select this body, and holding the Control key, select the base plate, and then click on Apply. And by default, the operation is Unite. So this will unite both bodies together, and then click on Generate. Now once both bodies are joined, we would like to add a radius to this sharp corner right here. So let's click on the Blend tool, Fixed Radius, and then using the Edge selector, we're going to click on this edge, and then holding Control, we're going to select this other edge over here, and then click on Apply under the Geometry tab here. And for the radius, we're going to enter 10 millimeters. Once that's all set, let's click on Generate. Now the final step is to create our screws. So before we do that, we're going to first create the holes for our screws. So let's move back up here and click on the XY plane again. Next, we're going to create a new sketch on the XY plane. Let's go and click on the normal button to look normal to it again. So as you can see here, it created something called Sketch 10. Now with Sketch 10 selected, let's go into the sketching mode, and we're going to create 4 circles. So click on the circle tool here, and I'm just going to draw 4 arbitrary circles in different quadrants, so one here and one there. And then next what I'm going to do is click on the dimensions, and I'm going to use semi-automatic. So click on that, and now I'm going to dimension each radius here, and then next the distances for each one of these. Next we're going to go into the details view here, and we're going to add all these properties. So what I'm going to want to do is change all the diameters to 10 millimeters, and I want to change all these dimensions here, which is the spacing from the center of the sketch, to 30 millimeters. Now let's go ahead and click on Extrude, and using Sketch 10 we're going to click on Apply for the geometry, and for the operation we're going to choose, instead of Add Material, let's try Slice Material in order to show you what this does. Now with Slice Material selected, we can see that it is slicing it in one direction only, the normal direction, so let's change that to both symmetric, and 100 millimeters should be good to pass through both bodies. And then let's go ahead and click on Generate. Let's click on the display pane here to get rid of the axes. So as you can see now, what happened was it created a few more bodies. So if I click on the body select, let's say I hide this lifting lug, so I can click on this lifting lug, right click and click on Hide Body. You can see now that it created these other bodies in its place using the Slice tool. So let's right click anywhere in the field and click on Show All Bodies. So now that that's done, we're going to go and make the top part of these screws. We're going to click on this button here to create a new plane. And in this case here, we're going to choose the From Face, and we're going to choose the base face to be this face right here. And click on Apply. And then click on Generate. Now this created plane 7. Now from plane 7, we're going to go right click, Insert, Sketch Projection. And using the sketch projection, we want to project these circles right here. So holding the Control key, we're going to select these faces right here, click on Apply, and then click on Generate. Let's look normal to this. Next, we see here we have Sketch 11. We're going to go into the, clicking on Sketch 11, we're going to go into the sketching. And now under Modify, we can go and use the Offset tool. We're going to go and click on each one of these circles, right click and click on End Selection, and then click again to offset. Then we'll click on End once again. We'll do that 4 more times. Right click, End Selection, click, right click, End. Now once that's done, we're going to click on the dimensions and click on Semi-Automatic. And let's go ahead and dimension each one of these diameters to 15 millimeters. Next, let's click on Extrude. And we're going to use the Sketch 12 as the extrusion geometry. We're going to add material, and we're going to extrude this 5 millimeters. Click on Generate. And there we have the top part of our screws. So finally, we're going to want to organize these parts and bodies together so it'll be easier to use in the final analysis. So let's go ahead and check what we got here. So we have our base, we have our lifting lug, and we see here now we have a bunch of other items called lifting lugs. So if we go and we check on this one, we can see that these are also called lifting lug, and these are basically the slices that came from the lifting lug, and we have other bases which came from the slices of the base. So what we're going to want to do now is regroup them differently. So this piece right here, we're going to call this to bolt 1, and then we're going to rename this also to bolt 1. And now for the top part of it, we're also going to rename this to bolt 1. And finally, we can hold Control key and select these 3 items, right click and click on Form New Part. Now under here, we can rename this again to bolt 1. Next, I'm going to do this for the other 4 bolts. So there you have your base, your lifting lug, and your 4 bolts. Now that we've completed designing our part in DesignModeler, we're ready to move on to the next module, which is opening up mechanical.